Hello and welcome back to Down to Disness, a monthly show where I pick a Disney animated movie and talk about it. History, fun facts, impact on pop culture. This month's movie is Tarzan, Disney's 37th animated film released in 1999. Like most Disney movies, Tarzan was based off of a book, or a book series, by Edgar Rice Burroughs. There are a ton of Tarzan books in the series, and there are also a ton of Tarzan film adaptations. The only other story that beats Tarzan out in terms of most film adaptations is Dracula. Tarzan is the second most film adaptations of any story ever. Can you believe it? But Disney's version of Tarzan is the only version of Tarzan with a one-word title, Tarzan. There are a lot of lovable characters in the movie Tarzan. There's Tarzan and Jane and the Professor and Turk and Tantor and Kala and all of these animal characters that we fall in love with very quickly before the humans even show up. But what's interesting is a lot of these characters were inspired by characters in the actual Tarzan book series, but their roles were kind of moved around. For example, Clayton, the villain in Disney's version, is actually William Cecil Clayton in the book, and he's Tarzan's cousin. In the books, Tarzan's real name is John Clayton, his birth name, his human species name. In the books, Turk is Tarzan's arch nemesis among the apes. Disney added Sabor to the movie because in the books, it's actually Kerchak, the ape who kills Tarzan's family. It's a little bit too intense for kids. Hey Tarzan, remember me, your adopted father? Well, actually, I killed your parents. The two things that stand out to me when I think about Tarzan are the music and the imagery. The always awesome Phil Collins did the entire soundtrack for Tarzan, and this was an intentional move on Disney's part to break away from the sing-songy, theater-type music from the previous Disney Renaissance films. Tarzan's soundtrack is so good, I feel like it's a little bit underrated. You can't really argue with an Academy Award for Best Song for You'll Be in My Heart. And the imagery, the sets, the backgrounds of Tarzan are out of control. The mid to late 90s are when Disney started experimenting with throwing in 3D aspects to traditionally hand-drawn 2D animated movies. The animators for Tarzan actually created a new rendering technique called Deep Canvas specifically to do the backgrounds for Tarzan. Deep Canvas allows the animators to create fully CGI backgrounds that look like actual paintings and then place 2D animated characters into it. They used this later in Atlantis and then more so in Treasure Planet, but it was first used for Tarzan. In 2003, the Academy even gave them a Technical Achievement Award for this new invention. And speaking of awards, not only did Tarzan win Best Song at the Oscars the year it was released, but it was also the last Disney, straight Disney, not Disney Pixar, animated movie to win an Oscar until Paperman in 2012. My favorite Disney animator ever is probably Glenn Keane. If you don't know about him, you really should. Glenn Keane worked on all of our favorite Disney Renaissance movies. He worked on The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and yes, Tarzan. He worked on Tarzan, and something that Glenn Keane is famous for is using his family and friends to inspire his artwork. Tarzan is no exception. Glenn Keane's son was a surfer and a skateboarder, and he used the movements he saw his son do on his boards to inspire the way that Tarzan slides on branches. Traditionally, Tarzan swung from vines, and he does do that in the Disney version, but he mostly surfs on tree branches. And his skateboarding skills were also inspired by Tony Hawk, but Tony Hawk. Because Tarzan is such a well-known character in the movie industry and in literature, Disney dubbed this movie over into a lot of different languages. Phil Collins even learned how to sing the whole soundtrack in a bunch of different languages. Italian, German, French, Spanish. It's crazy. He sang the soundtrack himself in a ton of different languages. There are a few Disney character cameos in Tarzan, most famously the appearance of Mrs. Pot and Chip from Beauty and the Beast during the scene when Turk and the other animals go to trash the camp. This is probably the most famous cameo in the movie because it's also a cameo that they used at Disneyland Park. When they transformed the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse into Tarzan's treehouse, they added Mrs. Potts and Chip to the attraction. What's interesting about Tarzan is that even if you haven't seen the Disney movie or any of the film versions of Tarzan, you still know who Tarzan is and you still know what sound he makes. That's the sound he makes, right? In Disney's movie, the Tarzan yell is actually voiced by the voice of Clayton, the villain. He's the one who did Tarzan's scream, signature sound, for the movie. Brian Bless, the voice of Clayton, can also take credit for having the most gruesome Disney death of all Disney deaths. Most Disney villains, you'll remember, usually fall to their death and we don't really see their body, or it's not very explicit at all what happens to them. Not the case with Clayton. Not only does Clayton actually doom himself, slicing vines. But then he hangs to death. Hangs himself by accident, and you see his body amongst the trees. It's very gruesome and graphic. So congratulations on having the most gruesome Disney death. Like I said, what I mostly enjoy about Tarzan is the soundtrack and the beautiful deep canvas imagery. I also really enjoy how Disney clearly did their research in looking at how animals move and how Tarzan, being a human raised by animals, would move if he existed. Tarzan was the last movie of the Disney Renaissance era. A lot of people argue, was it Mulan? Was it Tarzan? Sources say it was Tarzan. And while I love a lot of the movies that came after Tarzan, it truly was the end of an era, my favorite era, and for that reason it will always stick out in my mind as an important movie in Disney history. Let me know in the comments what your favorite thing about Tarzan is, besides his rockin' bod. My most recent Down to Disness was on Alice in Wonderland. If you want to watch that, you can click right here. But there are also links to my other Disney videos. I did a Peter Pan makeup tutorial recently, and I do Disneyland vlogs, and I talk about Disneyland food. All of those links are in the description box below. Thank you guys as always for watching, and I'll see you real soon. Bye!